Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back again with another installment in our quest to rid the world of superheroes and supervillains by killing each and every one of them. And our focus today is on one of the X-Men's most vicious villains, one of Wolverine's most ruthless rivals, the Soviet super soldier known as Omega Red. But if we're going to be eliminating superheroes and sending them off to the land of the dead, then what better sponsor to have for this video than one that deals with the idea of the Walking Dead. So do you have what it takes to lead a community through the world of the Walking Dead? Can you handle the never-ending roaming walkers as you scavenge for supplies through the southern landscape? Well, if you can, then you're the perfect person to check out the latest Walking Dead Survivors mobile game with a storyline that's based on the comic storyline by Robert Kirkman, which is probably one of the best comic book storylines of all time. I love the Walking Dead series, it's amazing. But in the Walking Dead Survivors mobile game, you can build and fortify your base. But not only can you fortify your base with buildings, you can do it with other people, like your own army. Now, one thing you do have to watch out for, guys, zombies are not the only threat. Other players are threats as well, which makes the game so fun because now it's an attack on multiple levels. It's what makes the game so cool. So make sure you guys check out the link down in the description and get pre-registered to get yourself a head start. So having said all that, before we figure out how to take out Omega Red, let's go over his origin and powers to see what makes him so hard to kill. So Omega Red was created by Jim Lee and John Byrne and first appeared in X-Men number 4 in 1992, which I have a copy of that comic. His real name is Arkady Grigorovich Rossovich, and there are actually a couple different versions of his origin. One is that he was a serial killer that was apprehended by Sean Cassidy, better known as the mutant Banshee, while he was working for the international law enforcement agency Interpol. Now, Interpol then hands Arkady over to the KGB, who see this as an opportunity to use him as a test subject to recreate the super soldier serum that turned Steve Rogers into Captain America, because that's basically what every evil organization in comics wants to do. Another origin is that Arkady was actually a soldier in the Soviet army. He's still a murderer in this version, but this time he's captured by his fellow soldiers who decide to execute him by shooting him in the head. To the astonishment of everybody, Arkady survives the gunshot, and it's at that point that the Soviet government decides that he's a prime candidate for their version of the super soldier program. Since then, he's worked with a variety of criminal organizations and has been a frequent antagonist of the X-Men, particularly for Wolverine, who has been his frequent adversary for reasons that we'll discuss once we actually get into our analysis of how to eliminate him. So Omega Red's powers come from two sources: his mutant physiology and the enhancements made by the Soviet super soldier serum. His mutant abilities grant him superhuman physical attributes, including strength, speed, stamina, and durability, as well as the ability to secrete pheromones known as death spores. Now, as their name suggests, these spores are potentially lethal to those they come into contact with. They would kill a normal person almost instantly, but those with superhuman abilities may only be harmed. The primary enhancement made to Omega Red as part of the super soldier experiment was the implementation of carbonatium tentacles into his arms. Now, carbonatium is a metal engineered by the Soviet government in an attempt to create adamantium. It's basically a poor man's adamantium. The resulting metal was not as durable as adamantium, but was a lot more flexible. So Omega Red can use these tendrils to either bludgeon people or he can restrain their movement, but he can also use them to channel his mutant ability to produce pheromones. Now, these abilities work in tandem to allow Omega Red to drain the life from those individuals that he's able to ensnare in his coils. Now, once he does this, he can use the energy he drains from his victims to augment his own strength. He's also an expert in military strategy and hand-to-hand combat due to the training he received as a Soviet super soldier and operative. So, with all that in mind, how do we take out Omega Red? Well, first, we need to address the fact that he's been killed before. In an altercation with Wolverine, Omega Red was actually killed when Wolverine stabbed him with the Muramasa Blade. Now, if you've been reading X of Swords, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with the Muramasa Blade. But for those of you who are not, because you have not, I'll give you a little background on it because I'm Comics Explained, and that's what I do here. So Muramasa is generally regarded as the greatest swordsmith on Earth. When Logan was living in Japan, shortly after the end of World War II, he accidentally stabbed a villager and was banned from the town. At this time, he was married to a woman named Itsu, and when he goes back to his house to say one final goodbye, he finds that she's actually been killed. Logan seeks out Muramasa, wanting a weapon that'll allow him to enact revenge on those responsible for his wife's death, and Muramasa promises to make him a weapon against which all will fall. But in order to do so, he needed to imbue the blade with Logan's blood and a piece of his soul, so definitely like some sorcery going on here. Now, forging the blade took several years, and when Logan returned to Muramasa to reclaim it, Muramasa told him to wield it like an angry god, which he does, notably using it to kill Omega Red among several other victims. So we know that it'll work. But what if we don't have access to the Muramasa blade because Wolverine's off fighting people and Krakoa with it? Well, I don't know, whatever reason you want to use here. Fortunately for us, Omega Red has another weakness that we can exploit, and this one also involves Wolverine. As it turns out, the Carbonatium implants are actually slowly killing him, and that's why draining the life from others is not something Omega Red just does because he's a crazy guy, although this is undoubtedly true, but he actually has to do it in order to stay alive. To remedy this, Omega Red needs a device called a Carbonatium synthesizer, which would negate the metal's negative effects. The trouble is, this device was stolen by Wolverine and Sabretooth and another mutant named Maverick, who are all working for the Canadian Special Ops organization Team X. So Omega Red frequently tries to track down Wolverine and beat this information out of him, but up to this point, it really just hasn't worked. So in theory, we don't really have to do anything to kill Omega Red. We could just lock him in a cell and let the Carbonatium do its work. And if we wanted him to end more rapidly, well, we could find some way to increase its toxic effects through some form of comic book technology. The problem is, though, even when he dies, Omega Red rarely stays dead, and our desire here is to kill him permanently. He was resurrected by members of a Russian cult through dark magic, but he was basically undead at that point. He would periodically rise from the grave, but he was never really able to stay alive for very long. This was eventually undone, and Omega Red was restored to life. He eventually makes his way to Krakoa, the haven for all mutant kind, where he's agreed to operate as a sleeper agent for Dracula in exchange for a Carbonatium synthesizer. So for our plan of using Omega Red's Carbonatium implants against him, we're going to have to either steal or neutralize the synthesizer. Then we have the added obstacle of Omega Red being on Krakoa, where mutants are resurrected after their deaths. However, if we're able to convince the mutants that Omega Red was in fact a spy, I doubt they would be too keen to resurrect him, and that's the way that we do this. Either we use the Muramasa Blade, or failing that, we find a way to intensify the toxic effects of the Carbonatium in his body, and then in turn, we just keep the mutant population from resurrecting him from the dead, and then he just stays dead forever. But if you guys have a better way, let me know in the comments, and let me know what other characters that we should try to get rid of in this series, because I kind of like the idea of bringing it back. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.